Hi everyone, welcome to Unknown Reviews. I'm Dylan. This is a channel where we talk about music, movies, MBTI, pretty much anything else I want to talk about. And today I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Arctic Monkeys album that drops, I think it's midnight tonight or it drops tomorrow, The Car. I cannot wait for this album. I've got the AM vinyl right here. I wish I had other ones too, like this one was gifted to me. It's not my favorite of theirs, but I'm just glad to have like an Arctic Monkeys album. My favorite album is Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, which probably gives away how much I can't wait for this album because they're going fully in the direction that they started going in with Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. It's this really interesting fusion of like lounge music, but also like art rock and glam rock and a little bit of like jazz in there. I personally think, based off of these 3 singles that have dropped so far, I think this is going to be Arctic Monkeys' best album, hands down. And the reason for that, the main reason for that, is that the amount of complexity that is in these songs. I just think this album is going to fully realize what they were starting to go for with Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. I love that album, but it took me years to love, and there's still tracks on it that aren't my favorite, I think could be worked on, which is why I completely understand why some people were turned off by it. Some people still aren't really into it. I think they were still trying to find exactly how they wanted to engage with this new style that they're in, and I think that was their first crack at it. It's really exciting to see them continue to go to into this direction. So I'm going to be talking mainly about their latest single that just dropped. This is the song that really kind of officially made me feel like this is going to be their best album, and this is the reason why. It goes back to the kind of complexity thing I was talking about before. I think it's one of the most compositionally like complex songs that they've done. When I was listening to it, I had to go to the piano because I was like, what are these chord progressions? What's going on? There's so many dissonant chord changes and different things and just really bold choices that you don't typically hear from a mainstream rock band, which is still what Arctic Monkeys is. Even though they're making so much weird sounding music, they are still a mainstream rock band. If you go to their Spotify listeners, it's like 36 million listeners. So it's really exciting to hear a band with such a large platform be so experimental. Getting into this track, I'm basically going to kind of be breaking down the chord progression and why this song is so like strange but also catchy and works so well, and I'm going to go into like the brilliance of it. And if you're not like a music nerd and you don't know chord theory or whatever, don't worry, I'm not like huge into chord theory either. I just like playing, so this is not going to be like super duper technical, so don't get overwhelmed. But that being said, so the song starts out with these 2 chords that just pop in over and over and over again and really kind of set the main foundation for the verse. So you've got this chord and this chord, and they just keep going back and forth all throughout the first verse. And what's really cool about that is that it's not your typical like chord progression. It's really kind of stark and off-putting in a sense because it kind of constantly keeps you on the edge of your seat because it's not a chord progression that resounds. Like, first of all, you just have those hits of the chord, and the other reason why it's really cool is because it's actually not commonly used chords. They take a very basic chord that's in its root position, D minor, which you've probably heard in a lot of songs, even if you don't realize it. It's pretty much a very basic chord in a very basic position. They take this chord and they basically like invert it, mess around with it so that it's in a totally different form, which gives it a whole different texture. This is a D suspended chord, I believe that's what it's called. If there's someone in the comments who knows more about that, correct me if I'm wrong. But right off the bat, they're using really interesting chord progressions. So what they do is they take this chord right here and they just change 1 note in it, but it changes the texture of the entire chord. So it's really just, in its simplest form, the verse that everything else is based off of is this right here. I think that it's so interesting how they're able to really kind of build out such an interesting verse and such an interesting instrumental palette and vocal melody just off of a very simple progression like that. So they take that progression that's kind of just going back and forth, leaving you on the edge of your seat, and then they bring a much brighter chord, a much simpler chord into the progression, and it changes the entire flavor of the song, and it makes it a lot more upbeat, and it's a really interesting kind of change. So they take this kind of more, you know, somewhat advanced chord, and then the next chord is this, which is just a very simple F minor chord. You've probably heard it in, well, you have heard it in a ton of pop songs. It's very light, it's very simple. And then they do this chord, which would originally sound dark in its original form. This is a D minor chord, another very popular chord. It's the same chord that this is based off of. They take the same chord and they interpolate it in a totally different way. They just invert the notes that are being played. So they turn this into this. And it automatically, just because of the way the notes are sequenced, sounds a lot lighter than this. So what's so brilliant is they bring this very simple F major chord in that really kind of lightens the tone of the entire song. And then they use the same D minor chord that they just painted this really interesting kind of like eerie and off-putting setting with, and they make it really bright and fun. So when you put it all together, it sounds like this. Got the two original chords that I think are just really unique and really cool and inventive. Then you've got the bright, simpler chords, but he doesn't keep it there. Then he goes into this really, again, dissonant, weird chord that you don't typically hear in a mainstream rock song. So you've got very simple chord, then another weird complex chord. Like, it's just so interesting to me. So you've got what we were talking about before, the lighter, and then that weird chord. So they go over it again, but this time they go right into the chorus. Totally different chords, and it's super cool. So they take this weird short kind of staccato thing that's been going on for the entire verse, and now they bring in pedal, they hold the chords out, and it totally changes. It makes the song feel so much grander, and it kind of gives you that release that you've been waiting for the entire portion of the first verse. Now, this alone, like, I haven't even gotten to the bridge, other things going in the song. I'm just talking about the general chord progression and kind of groove of the song. I haven't talked about the drums, I haven't talked about much of the vocal melody, I haven't talked about the guitar work, any of that. So that just goes to show you, I didn't even touch the lyrics. That goes to show you how complex this song is. And it's like, this kind of song is not something that you just hop on the piano and write and you just play by ear and you're not really putting much thought into like the technical side of it. This is a song that you have to be very intentional about, and it's very clear that at this point in Arctic Monkeys' career, they are very, very studied musicians, and it's just exciting to see them use that part of their repertoire but also still keep it fun and interesting and catchy, because it's not super technical to where it feels inaccessible. It's still really groovy and interesting and catchy. And I think the reason why is because you're throwing in all of these different tones and vibes, but they're all playing off each other so well, and you don't stay in the same place for too long. So you've got this chorus, which is really, the first two chords are just the same chord in a different position, and then same thing for the third chord, except but he throws in an F note, I believe. I'm not, like, these chords are not entirely exact, because I've only listened to this song today. I listened to it a few times and just tried to parse out sort of what I'm hearing, so this is not exact, but it is kind of what I'm hearing. So it's three different versions of the same chord, but they all sound so different. And then he throws in a really interesting, again, dissonant chord that immediately resolves. And I just think it's so cool. I just think it's so cool. And that's, again, just the chorus and the original verse. So from the chorus, he goes right back into the very dissonant verse that came before it. doing it in a lower octave here. Again, like I said, you don't have to really know music theory to kind of like get why it's so effective, but that's the reason why. It's a very stark transition that somehow still manages to work, even though it sounds so dissonant. So the second verse kind of repeats itself, but again, this is such an interesting chord progression that's so fresh, and coming off the really stark transition, it doesn't feel like it's gotten old or anything. It brings that kind of like tense, weird vibe that was in the first, it brings it back. So you're in that space for a little bit, Alex is doing his thing, and then it transitions using totally new chords again to this really interesting bridge that makes the song sound even more strange and beautiful and exotic. So what he does, just jumping ahead to kind of where the transition happens, he uses, again, another weird dissonant chord, and then he goes here, and then a very simple chord, and now we're back to bright again. So we have, again, another theme all throughout the melody of this song. You've got dissonant and weird to bright and simple. So then he throws in an E major and it really sounds like you've arrived. And then you stay in that place for a little bit. He messes around with these chords. I'm just kind of giving you the vibe. I don't think this is exactly what he plays. But then he goes from this really kind of nice sounding, brighter part, again, right back into the original dissonant verse. And it goes like this over again. I'm kind of screwing up, but it's whatever. And then the chorus goes over again, and then it just ends at the like wah part, you know, where he's like wah. And the song just ends like that. There's no big climactic ending or anything like that. It's just this really cool, off-kilter song that is somehow still really catchy, and I think it's actually kind of all held together by the interplay between like the piano and the drums, that constant snare beat going over and over again. But yeah, with the guitar and his vocals, everything just comes together really well. And the one thing that I'll say about his guitar and his vocals in this track is that I think they also kind of make the transitions, the really kind of stark chord transitions, a little bit easier, because they kind of serve as the middle ground, kind of introducing different notes and things like that to kind of make it sound a bit more smoother. Like, for example, every time that the chorus comes in, there's a guitar lick that comes right before it to kind of set it up. It's like an alley-oop. Like if you're into sports, you can think about it that way. And I don't know, I just think it's such an intricately produced track. I tried to keep it somewhat brief because, I mean, I haven't really sorted through all of it myself. So there might be some things that I got like a little bit wrong, or some details that I kind of went over quickly. But it's just a really, really great song. There's so many jazz chords and jazzy kind of progressions, but it works so well with the standard kind of rock thing that they're going with as well. It's super exciting. I can't wait. I didn't even touch the lyrics, which are charming and witty and confusing in all the best ways. And just the overall production and instrumentation is just really exciting. A quick kind of overview of the other two tracks. I think they're both really good in totally different ways. I think Body Paint stands out for its overall use of orchestral instrumentation and rock, and it's a lot more cinematic, whereas I feel like this one is a lot more technical. That one's a lot more cinematic. That one is beautiful. And then I think that There Better Be a Mirror Ball is a really good ballad. I do think it drags out a little bit, but the intro, again, the orchestral instrumentation, the chord progressions, it's really, really all put together so well. So I just can't wait for this album. I mean, I think that these three singles hit the mark in so many ways, in their own unique ways. So I just can't wait to hear what else is on the album. Like I said, I think this album is going to be a classic, and I think this song is a big reason why. This song is going to be like a lot of songs on the album that are really kind of interesting and off kilter, but also intricately put together, somehow still catchy, and somehow still like classic Arctic Monkeys. So yeah, I can't wait for this album. I'm gonna review it as soon as I can. I believe it drops tonight or tomorrow. But yes, please like and subscribe. Comment, what did you like about the song? What are you looking forward to with the Arctic Monkeys album? Stay tuned for more reviews of all different kinds of things. I'm reviewing a bunch of stuff that's coming up. The Benny the Butcher album I am also reviewing because the Arctic Monkeys and Benny Butcher album drop on the same day. There's a couple of other things coming up. The Freddie Gibbs review. I want to review Alex G. I want to do something on Beach House so badly because they are my favorite band in the world. But just drop me what you want to see me cover, and I'll see what I can do. I love to interact with you guys. So yeah, that's my commentary on the new Arctic Monkeys single, what I'm expecting for the album, and yeah, see you guys next time. So you've got